Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today, we're going to tackle a really big question. Are our traditions holding us back? Is tradition the source of wisdom that keeps us safe, or is it more like a trap, stopping society from moving forward? It's this huge tug of war between the comfort of the past and the promise of the future. So let's dive in and try to unpack it. To really get a handle on one side of this debate, we're going to start with a simple story. It's a parable, really, that serves as a big warning against changing things just for the sake of it. So picture this. There's this quiet little village, and all around it is a tall wooden fence. Now, this isn't just some random fence. It's always been there. It's part of the scenery, part of their identity. Seriously, nobody alive can even remember a time when the fence wasn't there. It just is. Then one day, a traveler shows up. And with a fresh set of eyes, this traveler asks a totally logical question. Hey, why is this fence here? You've got this gorgeous view and it's completely blocked. But the villagers, they just kind of shrug. They have no idea. They've been painting it and fixing it for generations, but the actual reason it was built has been totally lost to time. Well, the traveler makes a pretty good point. A better view might bring in tourists, maybe more business. And hey, if nobody knows why the fence is there in the first place, what's the harm in taking it down? It seems like a no-brainer, just simple, straightforward progress. So they're convinced, and the next day, down comes the fence. And that's when it all goes horribly wrong. That very night, with the fence gone, wolves sneak into the village and just decimate their livestock. The devastating truth hits them: the fence wasn't there to block the view. It was there for protection. They got rid of a tradition without ever understanding its original and very vital purpose. And this whole story is a perfect example of a principle called Chesterton's fence. It's this really powerful argument for being cautious. It suggests that these old institutions and traditions might actually have a kind of hidden wisdom baked into them, a purpose that we just can't see anymore. So, the takeaway here is pretty clear. Before you go rushing to change something that's been around forever, you really ought to understand why it exists. Just because you don't see the reason for a tradition doesn't mean there isn't one. You might be tearing down a wall that's protecting you from wolves you didn't even know were out there. Okay, so that's a really compelling case for tradition. But here's the twist. Here's the counter question that flips that entire story on its head. And this forces us to look at the complete opposite side of the argument, where tradition isn't a protective shield, but is actually a cage. Right, because appealing to tradition isn't always about keeping us safe from wolves. Sometimes that word is used as a weapon to deny people their most basic, fundamental rights. Let me give you a real-world example. Back in 2012, the UN Human Rights Council passed this resolution. Now, on the surface, it sounds great, right? It's all about promoting human rights by understanding traditional values. Sounds harmless, maybe even noble, but for human rights groups all over the world, this set off some major alarm bells. And here's why. Human Rights Watch has documented countless heartbreaking cases where that vague, nice-sounding phrase, traditional values, is used to justify the absolute worst abuses. Things like forced marriages, so-called honor crimes, FGM, and laws that prevent women from inheriting property. Suddenly, these aren't protective fences anymore. They're walls built to imprison people, especially women and girls. And this gets to a really important point. The goal of international human rights isn't to just go in and bulldoze every tradition and erase every culture. Not at all. The goal is transformation. It's about carefully looking at our fences and helping them evolve, getting rid of the parts that cause real harm while still trying to hold on to the cultural identity they represent. So now we've got these two powerful, completely opposite ideas. Is tradition a wise protector, or is it a cruel tyrant? Well, what if that's the wrong question entirely? A lot of sociologists would argue that the reality is way, way more complicated than that. So instead of thinking about tradition and modernity like two armies at war, it's better to see the relationship as something called a dialectical process. Basically, think of it like a constant conversation or even a dance. There's a push and pull where each one is constantly influencing and reshaping the other. Modern life grows out of tradition, and tradition, in turn, gets redefined by our modern world. And this reveals a really crucial difference, because not all traditions are created equal. You have stagnant traditions, the ones that refuse to adapt. They become disconnected, and sometimes they turn into tools of oppression. But then you have dynamic traditions. These are the ones that evolve. They find new ways to express their core meaning, which allows them to stay alive and relevant in our world today.
Okay, so what does this art of adaptation actually look like in practice? How does a tradition manage to bend with the times without totally breaking?
Well, let's take harvest festivals. Most of us don't work on farms anymore, right? So that tradition adapts. It becomes things like urban community gardens or local food festivals. Or think about oral storytelling. It's challenged by digital media, so it reinvents itself as podcasts or interactive video games. The core idea is still there, but the form has completely changed. And, this ability to evolve, it isn't a weakness. It's actually the definition of strength. It's a concept called cultural resilience. It's the ability of a culture to face a challenge, to reorganize itself, and to still hold on to its essential identity. It's all about being rooted in who you are, but not so rigid that you can't grow. And what's really fascinating is that this dance between tradition and modernity can even have measurable economic effects. Research from the World Value Survey actually shows a link between certain cultural values and economic growth. Things like autonomy and life satisfaction show a positive correlation with a country's GDP. It kind of suggests that when a culture evolves, economic progress can follow. So this brings us all the way back to our story about the fence. But now, instead of just seeing a weird wall that we don't understand, we've got a much smarter set of tools to figure out what to do with it. I think the biggest takeaway here is that looking at tradition as a simple yes or no, a keep it or toss it decision, is just the wrong way to go about it. The most important question we can possibly ask isn't if we should keep it, but why it was put there in the first place, and what is it actually doing today? So we almost have to become detectives. First, what was this tradition's original purpose? Was it built to keep out wolves? Second, and this one's huge, who does it serve right now? Does it protect everybody equally, or does it give power to one group while taking it from another? And finally, can it evolve? Can it be adapted to line up with our modern values of equality and human rights? These are the questions that help us figure out which fences are still protecting us and which ones are just holding us back. And this quote, which comes from a landmark court case that struck down a discriminatory law, it really says it all. Tradition isn't some static monument from the past that we have to worship without question. It's a living, breathing part of our world. And the challenge for every single generation is to guide its change wisely. The real job, then, isn't to just keep or discard our fences, but to become their thoughtful caretakers. Thanks for watching my video. If you liked it and learned something new, or if you want to share your own opinion or experiences, please comment down below. I would love to see your thoughts. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel and turn on that notification bell so you get notified when I upload more videos like this. Have a good day. Bye.